All right, so we are going to jump in. So we start with my definition of fear. So fear is an emotional response to a perception of ourselves as powerless and or unlovable in a given situation. All right, so the key thing, and one of the key things in this definition is to a perception of ourselves. So again, I've been saying since day one, this question of how do you see yourself? How do I see myself? Who do I think I am? That determines everything. That determines my experience of every relationship, of every situation, of every interaction I have with other people, with my environment. It all begins with how I see myself, who I think I am. So if I have a perception of myself as powerless and or unlovable, then chances are pretty good I'm going to have a negative emotional response to that. Remember, our thoughts lead to our feelings. And part of our thoughts as a mental process are our beliefs and our perceptions. So if my beliefs, my perceptions, my thinking is negative, I'm going to experience a negative emotion. Now, in this case, we said we have an emotional response. So I'm saying emotion is energy in motion. I'm sure you've heard that before, but why is that important? Well, the thing I want to call to your attention is our emotional state affects our ability to do things in the world. Again, if I'm depressed or if I'm sad or if I'm angry or if I have self-pity, chances are pretty good I'm not really going to be able to do much out there that's significant in the world. In terms of being of service to others, could just be my own family, friends, neighbors, whatever. So when I have a low emotional state, my energy is down. And when my energy is down, I'm not going to feel like doing anything. I'm not going to feel like doing the things I need to do for myself, much less the things I'd like to do for other people. So our emotional state influences our energy, our physical energy in our body. Now I'm going to talk more about perceiving ourselves as powerless and or unlovable in a minute, but I want to come back to what we also talked about in chapter 4, and that's the difference between fear and caution. So I'm not saying in any of this work that we have to throw caution to the wind. We don't want to ignore, our sense of safety, our sense of common sense or anything like that. Caution means we wear a seatbelt when we drive. We look both ways before we cross the street. We read all the material before we invest in that investment. That's caution. And it's a common sense approach to life. It's a rational and proportional response to the vicissitudes of life. Because there are challenges out there, there are dangers out there, there are pitfalls. And coming from a place of caution, we can address those things in a rational, healthy, functional manner. Fear, on the other hand, for many of us, is neither rational nor proportional. So I had an experience just this afternoon where my fear, the way I saw myself in a particular situation was exactly what we're talking about here. I saw myself as powerless. I saw somebody else as having power over me and doing something that was going to negatively impact me. And I felt there was nothing I could do about that. And I immediately felt that surge of fear, anxiety, stress. And it was all based on how I saw myself in that moment. But the thing was, I could not respond to that situation rationally or proportionally. I'm looking back now on how I reacted, and it was way out of proportion to what was actually happening. So it wasn't a proportional response. It wasn't an effective response. And the good news is I didn't stay there as long as I might have in the past, and I was able to pull myself out of it and have a different, form and focus on a different idea about myself to refocus my attention. Last week, I think it was, we said that stress comes from when we focus on things we have no power over. And I recognized that I was focusing on something that I had no power over, and I was feeling anxious and stressful as a result. So the difference between fear and caution, we take care of ourselves, we do whatever is reasonable and necessary to protect ourselves and all of that. But we want to be aware, because when the problem, like I had today, when I get into that place of fear, I don't make good choices and decisions. I could see, looking back on what I did in that moment, I was not making good choices and decisions for myself. And it was all coming out of fear, anxiousness, powerlessness, lack of safety. And again, the good news is I caught myself and I was able to reverse most of that. But it really had an impact on me. And I can see how in the past, I could have spent a whole day or longer in that state. And as I always say, the negative emotions are not the problem. The problem is when we make choices and decisions based on those emotions. So I did a few things, I'm looking back now, that I realized I probably could have done differently. I'm not going to beat myself up for that. I'm not going to make myself wrong. But I am going to recognize that when that fear comes up, I really, really have to get centered. I have to get focused. I have to shift how I see myself in that moment, focus on what I can change, what I do have control over, and notice then that I can make better choices and decisions for myself.